Well, let's talk a bit more about this tariff war between the U.S. and China and how it might affect Canada. We're happy to have back on the program again Guy Saint Jacques, Canada's ambassador to China from 2012 to 2016. Monsieur Saint Jacques, thank you again for the time.
Well, thank you for the invitation, Mr. Serapio.
Now, Beijing says it will fight U.S. tariffs to the end and that it has the means to fight this war. Given what you know, given the size of the Chinese economy, is that a statement that Beijing can actually back up?
I think so. And there are many aspects to this. I think that President Xi Jinping would face a very strong domestic reaction if he were not to push back on the tariff imposed by President Trump. And it's true that the Chinese economy is not in the best shape. The housing sector is still going slowly. There's a lot of debt. But at the same time, China is using this to portray itself as a much more reliable partner than the United States. It says that it's a champion of globalization, of free trade, that it keeps its word. And I think it's part of its plan to try to occupy more space. And they feel that, in fact, Donald Trump is giving them the opportunity to do so. It's true that in terms of exports, they are still relying on the U.S. market, but the proportion of their exports that goes to the U.S. has gone from it was at 19.2% in 2018, and last year it was at 14.7%. And also, they have indicated that they could consider other measures to retaliate against the United States.
Okay, so things to continue to watch for. Because, meanwhile, though, here we have Canada in its own trade war with China PRC. Canada slapping 100% on Chinese EVs, 25% on steel and aluminum. China imposing 100% tariff on Canadian canola and some agricultural products. But given the challenge that Donald Trump is presenting to both economies now, is it time to revisit those tariffs from the Canadian perspective?
Well, I would say first that if the war between the United States and China goes on for a while, we may benefit from that because, of course, the latest tariffs that China will apply amount to 84%. But now we have just heard that President Trump will impose more tariffs, that it will go up to 125% on China. And there are some products, agricultural products, that we sell that, in fact, could replace U.S. agricultural products. But more broadly, I think that the fact that we will have a new government in Ottawa in about 1 month, I think is a good opportunity for us to reassess where we want to be with China. And we have seen that by following very closely what the U.S. is doing, that it didn't buy us any brownie points in Washington, quite the contrary. And therefore, I think we should reassess the tariffs that we have imposed on Chinese electric vehicles, maybe follow a more systematic approach like that was pursued in Europe, where they did a study and they came up with tariffs that vary between about 10 to 35%. And the Chinese market remains a difficult one, but I think it's possible for Canada to do business. Last year we exported almost $30 billion worth of goods. I think there are a possibility to increase that, and we have to assume that things will remain very challenging with the U.S. administration. So in terms of diversifying our trade, we'll have to look to China and, of course, at other countries that have been identified in the Indo-Pacific strategy.
Mm-hmm. But do we need to be concerned about that? Because as you noted, China is using this opportunity to build itself up around the world as the reliable trade partner. But up against that, that push to define itself, we also know that China PRC has interfered in Canadian elections, intimidates Canadian citizens. Is there still not a danger of, regardless of what we're going through with the United States, is there not a danger of engaging with China on trade?
Well, of course, we will have to be very careful, and I think we have learned a lot in the last few years about the the behavior of China, and China use bullying tactics, coercive measures, and we have been victim of that. So I think it will be a matter for the federal government to establish its own red lines and to tell China that interference in the Canadian electoral process or among the Chinese community in Canada won't be tolerated, that if we catch people trying to steal our technology, they will be charged, and so it won't come to where it was previously. But I think we cannot ignore China. China is a big superpower. It will use this crisis with the United States to continue to buttress the support it gets in developing countries that many are very affected by Donald Trump's tariffs. And I think for these reasons, it's possible to be firm in our relationship with China and to increase trade. But of course, it will remain a difficult situation. And I think in parallel, because we are also in a situation where we need a more predictable trade environment to continue doing business. Canada is very trade dependent in terms of our GDP. I think that Canada should launch an initiative with allies, European allies, countries like Japan, South Korea, including China, to try to establish maybe a parallel organization to the similar to the World Trade Organization, but that would exclude the United States, but have clear rules for everyone on the way forward and establish a level playing field with clear penalties for countries that don't play by the rule.
Exclude the United States because it has proven itself unreliable?
Well, yes, and I think that in the case of Donald Trump, he had signed a revised North American Free Trade Agreement in 2018. He doesn't honor his word. We know that the method that he is using to impose tariffs it doesn't make any sense. Economists have criticized it. I would say all economists have criticized it. And therefore, unless there are major changes in Washington, I think we have to treat them as unreliable partners. We'll have to see. In fact, once we have a new government, I think it's worth to make an effort to try to clarify the rules. But for this, there will always be this Damocles sword on whether Mr. Trump will change his mind again in the future.
Guy Saint Jacques, always appreciate the insight. Thank you for that.
Thank you.